A man walked into my clinic last year. He was 67 years old, never smoked a day in his life, no family history of heart disease. He was eating what he genuinely believed was a clean, balanced diet every single day. But when we looked at his arteries, they told a completely different story. The damage we found was the kind I normally associate with someone 2 full decades older. Inflamed, stiff, worn down in ways that did not match his lifestyle at all. We spent a long time going over everything. His genetics were not the problem. His stress levels were not the problem. His weight was not the problem. The pattern we found came back to something he had never once questioned. The way he reheated his meals every single night. I am Dr. Haroon Malik. I am a cardiovascular surgeon, and I have spent more than 30 years operating on the human heart. What I am about to share with you today is something most physicians never bring up during a routine checkup. But if you are over 60, it matters far more than you realize. There are 5 everyday foods that become genuinely harmful when reheated. Not just hard on the stomach, genuinely harmful. When these foods go back into the heat a second time, they trigger a process inside your body that quietly chips away at your arteries and raises your risk of serious illness at the very same time. Stay with me. By the time we finish, you will look at your leftovers in a completely different way. Before we get into the 5 foods, I want you to understand something important about what happens to your body after 60. When you were in your 30s or 40s, your body had a powerful ability to absorb damage without showing it. Free radicals, low-grade toxins, mild inflammation. Your cells dealt with all of it quietly and efficiently. You never felt it. You never had to think about it. After 60, that same system starts to slow down. Your liver clears toxins at a reduced pace. Your immune response becomes less precise. The walls of your arteries grow thinner and less flexible. And the mechanisms your cells use to repair damaged DNA become significantly less reliable. That does not mean you are fragile, but it does mean the margin for error gets much smaller. Something that was harmless at age 40 is not automatically harmless at age 65. This is where inflammation becomes the central issue. Inflammation is not your enemy in every situation. In the short term, it is how your body heals itself. You get a cut, and inflammation helps close it. You catch an infection, and inflammation fights it off. That is natural and necessary. The danger is a different kind. Chronic inflammation. Low-level, slow-burning, constant inflammation that never fully shuts off. Chronic inflammation does not stay in one place. It damages your arteries. It creates conditions where abnormal cell changes become far more likely over time. I have watched both of those outcomes play out on the operating table more times than I would like to count. What makes the 5 foods we are about to discuss so dangerous is that when reheated, every single one of them produces compounds your body cannot neutralize efficiently after 60. And when those compounds build up day after day, meal after meal, the consequences are real. Let us start with the one that is almost certainly sitting in your kitchen right now. Fried food, French fries, fried chicken, anything cooked in vegetable oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil. You probably already know this category is not health food. But what most people do not know is that the real danger is not in eating it the first time. The danger is in reheating it. When you put vegetable oil cooked food back in the heat the next day, the oil goes through a chemical breakdown. It oxidizes. And in that process, it releases compounds called aldehydes. These are the same compounds found in cigarette smoke. That is not an exaggeration. That is simply what the chemistry shows. So what do aldehydes do once they are inside your body? First, they go directly after your arterial walls. They trigger oxidative stress. That stress damages the cells lining your blood vessels. Over time, that damage causes inflammation. The walls of your arteries thicken, stiffen, and lose their natural flexibility. For anyone over 60 whose arteries are already less elastic than they used to be, this is a serious concern. It is one of the fastest known pathways to elevated blood pressure. But that is only part of the picture. Aldehydes are also free radicals. And free radicals do something that should concern everyone. They attack DNA. They go after the genetic material inside your cells. Most of the time, your body catches and repairs that damage. But after 60, that repair process slows down. Some of those mutations slip through undetected. And when enough mutations accumulate in the wrong location, that is precisely how serious cellular illness begins. You do not have to give up fried food entirely, but reheating it, especially in the microwave or with additional oil added back in, That is where the damage compounds. If you have leftover fried food, use an oven or air fryer at a moderate temperature with no extra oil added. Better yet, eat it cold. The heat is what drives the reaction, not the food itself. Now this next one surprises people every single time. Because leafy greens are supposed to be among the healthiest foods on earth. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and they absolutely are healthy when handled correctly. The problem does not start while they are raw. It starts after they are cooked. Raw spinach and kale naturally contain nitrates. These are compounds that are largely harmless in their original form. Your body handles them without much difficulty. But once leafy greens are cooked and allowed to sit, bacteria begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. That conversion happens at room temperature, and it accelerates when the greens are not stored properly. That part alone is still manageable. The real damage comes when you add heat a second time. When you reheat cooked leafy greens, that heat causes the nitrites already present to react with proteins in the food. What gets produced in that reaction are compounds called nitrosamines. These are classified as probable human carcinogens by the World Health Organization, with documented links to stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, and colon cancer. But cancer risk is not even the only issue. Nitrosamines also trigger vascular inflammation. They damage the endothelium, which is the inner lining of your blood vessels. When that lining becomes inflamed, your arteries lose their ability to regulate blood flow properly. Blood pressure becomes harder to manage. The risk of clotting goes up. For someone over 60, dealing with both elevated cancer risk and active cardiovascular inflammation simultaneously represents a genuine and serious concern. The frustrating part about this one is that you are trying to do the right thing. You cook spinach because it is nutritious. You are reheating leftovers because it is convenient. The simple solution is to cook only as much as you plan to eat in a single sitting. Leftover cooked greens should go cold into a salad. Never reheat them. And one additional point worth knowing. If you are leaving cooked greens sitting at room temperature before they go into the fridge, even 1 hour is enough to accelerate the harmful conversion significantly. Rice seems like the most harmless food imaginable. Plain, simple, neutral in almost every way. Billions of people eat it every single day. And yet reheated rice causes more food-related illness than nearly any other staple food on the planet. Here is why. When you cook rice, the heat kills most bacteria. But one particular type of bacteria does not follow the same rules. Its spores survive boiling. They survive cooking entirely. They go dormant in the heat. Then the rice cools down and those spores wake up and begin multiplying rapidly. You might think that thoroughly reheating the rice will kill whatever grew back. And you are right that the bacteria die. But the toxins they already produce while multiplying do not die. This particular organism releases heat-resistant toxins as it reproduces. You can heat that rice until it is fully steaming and those toxins are still present, still active, still capable of causing harm. In the short term, the symptoms are nausea and vomiting. Unpleasant but survivable. But here is what almost no one talks about. Repeated exposure to these low-level toxins 2, 3, or 4 times a week over months and years produces chronic intestinal inflammation. And that inflammation does not stay contained in the gut. The digestive system and the cardiovascular system are connected through several overlapping pathways. Inflammatory signals travel through the bloodstream. Shifts in gut bacteria directly affect how cholesterol is metabolized and how blood pressure is regulated. I have evaluated patients with unexplained cardiovascular inflammation. Normal weight, non-smokers, reasonable diets, no obvious cause. When we looked closely at their daily habits, improperly stored and reheated rice was a consistent thread. The fix is simple. Cool rice fast. Get it into the refrigerator within 1 hour of cooking. Use it within 24 hours. Reheat it one time and one time only. Even better, cook smaller amounts so there is nothing left over to reheat at all. Chicken is where this conversation gets personal for a lot of people, because reheating chicken is something most households do without a second thought. It seems completely fine. It is not, at least not in the most common way people do it. When you cook chicken and then refrigerate it, the proteins inside begin to restructure. When you apply high heat quickly, the outside gets hot while the center stays cold. That temperature gap is where bacteria survive. And with chicken, the bacteria of concern are Salmonella and Campylobacter, both capable of causing severe gastrointestinal illness. But beyond the immediate food safety risk, there is a longer-term issue. Chicken is high in protein. When protein-dense food is exposed to high heat repeatedly, especially in a microwave, It undergoes a process called protein oxidation. Oxidized proteins are not just harder to digest, they generate reactive compounds that promote systemic inflammation. The cardiovascular connection follows the same path I described with the other foods. Chronic low-level cumulative inflammation putting ongoing pressure on your arteries. The practical solution here is straightforward. Skip the microwave for reheating chicken. Use an oven with the dish covered at a moderate temperature. This ensures heat reaches the center without scorching the outside. Even better, eat leftover chicken cold in a salad, in a wrap or sliced with vegetables on the side. No uneven heating, no bacterial risk, no additional oxidation. Potatoes are the last food on this list, and they carry two completely separate risks that most people have never heard of together. The first involves a compound called acrylamide. When starchy foods are cooked at high temperatures, a chemical reaction occurs between natural sugars and a specific amino acid in the food. That reaction produces acrylamide. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies it as a probable human carcinogen with documented associations to kidney cancer and other forms of serious cellular disease. The critical point here is this. The first time you cook a potato, acrylamide forms. When you reheat it, more acrylamide forms on top of what was already there. Every reheating cycle compounds your exposure. After 60, your body detoxifies acrylamide less efficiently than it used to. The same amount causes more internal damage than it would have a decade earlier. That is the cancer side of the equation. The cardiovascular side is equally important and far less discussed. When a potato is cooked and then allowed to cool, something interesting happens. A portion of the starch converts into what is called resistant starch. Resistant starch behaves more like dietary fiber than like regular carbohydrate. It feeds healthy gut bacteria, and it slows the release of glucose into your bloodstream. Blood sugar rises gradually and smoothly. When you reheat that potato, the resistant starch converts back into regular starch. Regular starch is digested rapidly. Your blood sugar spikes. Your pancreas has to produce a surge of insulin to compensate. For anyone over 60 dealing with any degree of insulin resistance, that cycle is directly harmful. Sharp, repeated blood sugar fluctuations create oxidative stress in your blood vessel walls. They accelerate arterial stiffening and contribute directly to cardiovascular disease over time. One reheated potato simultaneously creating carcinogen exposure and a cardiovascular stress response. That is what I mean when I call it a silent double threat. The practical solution is also the easiest one on this list. Eat potatoes cold when possible. A cold potato salad dressed with olive oil and fresh herbs is genuinely one of the smartest meals you can put together after 60. Resistant starch stays intact. Blood sugar stays stable. If you want them warm, cook a fresh batch at low heat for a short time with no oil added. I want to take a step back for a moment. We have talked about 5 individual foods, but the larger point I want to leave you with is this. What happens when these foods work together against you quietly over months and years? This is something I see from a vantage point most people will never have. When you spend decades in an operating room, you develop a different relationship with time. You see the final results of choices people made years before they ever walked through your door. The patient in front of me did not end up there because of a single bad meal. They got there because of a pattern that repeated itself thousands of times. And chronic inflammation is that pattern. Every food we discussed today, reheated oils, nitrosamines, bacterial toxins, oxidized proteins, compounded acrylamide, all of them feed the exact same underlying process, chronic low-level systemic inflammation. Here is what that actually looks like inside the body over time. Your arterial walls develop microscopic damage. Your immune system sends inflammatory cells to begin repairing that damage. Those cells accumulate. Plaque starts to build. The arteries narrow, blood pressure climbs. The heart has to work harder and harder to push blood through vessels that are becoming increasingly rigid. Meanwhile, your cells are under constant oxidative stress. The more inflammation present, the higher the rate of cellular mutation, and the more mutations accumulate, the greater the likelihood that one of them escapes detection and develops into something far more serious. Heart disease and serious cellular illness are not separate problems with separate causes. In many patients, they share the same origin: chronic inflammation. After 60, the timeline for that process compresses. The body carries less reserve than it did before. What took 20 years to develop at age 40 can take closer to 10 years at age 65. I do not tell you this to frighten you. I tell you this because the body's capacity for recovery is genuinely remarkable, and most people underestimate it. Inflammation is reversible. Arterial function can improve. These processes can be slowed. In many cases, they can be stopped entirely through consistent practical changes that require no prescription and no specialist appointment. Here are the 5 swaps in plain terms. Fried food, oven or air fryer, no oil added or eat it cold. The goal is to prevent the oils already in the food from oxidizing further. Leafy greens, cook only what you will finish in one sitting. Whatever is left over goes cold, into a salad or a grain bowl, refrigerated within 30 minutes of it cooling down. Rice, cool it fast, into the refrigerator within 1 hour of cooking. Use it within 24 hours. Reheat only once. Better yet, cook smaller amounts. Chicken, no microwave, oven at moderate temperature with a cover, or eat it cold. No uneven heating, no bacterial risk, no additional protein oxidation. Potatoes, embrace the cold version. Cold potato salad with olive oil and lemon is one of the most protective meals you can make after 60. Resistant starch stays intact. Blood sugar stays stable. If you need them warm, start fresh with a new batch cooked low and slow. None of these changes require you to give up foods you enjoy. They simply require you to think differently about temperature and timing. And they stack. Each individual swap reduces your overall inflammatory load. All 5 together reduce it significantly over weeks and months. That reduction shows up in ways you can actually feel. More stable energy throughout the day, more consistent blood pressure readings, better digestion, clearer thinking. These are not small things. Your kitchen habits after 60 are one of the most powerful tools available to you for protecting your cardiovascular health. I do not say that lightly. I have stood at an operating table with a patient in front of me in some of the most serious moments of their life, and I have had the very specific experience of looking directly at a human heart and seeing the accumulated result of decisions that person made years and years before they ever needed surgery. You stop being abstract about health in those moments. You stop thinking in statistics because there is no statistic in front of you. There is a 68-year-old grandfather whose arteries are so inflamed and so rigid that they look like old garden hose left out in the sun for 20 years. And the question that stays with you long after you leave the operating room is how much of this was preventable. The honest answer, based on everything I have witnessed and everything the research consistently supports, is that a significant portion of it was. Not all of it. Genetics play a role. Age plays a role. There are factors completely outside anyone's control, and I have no interest in assigning blame. But chronic inflammation is largely preventable, and chronic inflammation sits at the root of an enormous proportion of the cardiovascular disease and serious cellular illness I have seen throughout my career. What continues to surprise me most is not the obvious cases. It is the patients who did nearly everything right. They exercised regularly, they watched their weight, they cooked at home instead of eating out, and yet their arteries show the clear signs of chronic inflammatory damage. When we trace their daily habits carefully, the same patterns emerged every time. Oils reheated twice a day, spinach microwaved every morning as a habit, rice left on the counter overnight, chicken microwaved 3 or 4 times a week without a second thought. None of those things felt dangerous to them. That is the entire problem. They feel like normal, sensible, even responsible behavior. But inside the body, after 60, these repeated chemical exposures accumulate. The inflammation never fully resolves. The cellular repair system starts missing things it should catch, and over time, the consequences become impossible to ignore. This is the conversation I wish I could have had with every one of those patients before they ended up needing surgery, before the procedures, before the options got smaller. You still have all of your options right now. You are watching this because you are paying attention to your health and asking the right questions. The changes we covered today are 5 simple adjustments to how you handle specific foods, and every single one of them is within your reach starting today. No prescription required. The body you are living in after 60 has carried you a remarkable distance, and it has more capacity to recover than most people give it credit for. What it needs from you is to stop adding fuel to a fire that is already burning quietly beneath the surface. Reduce the inflammation, protect the arteries, give your cells a real fighting chance. That is not philosophy. That is what 30 years in the operating room teaches you. Which of these 5 foods surprised you the most? Leave your answer in the comments below. I genuinely want to know. If someone you care about is over 60 and reheating these foods regularly, share this video with them. Not to alarm them, but to give them the same information you now have. If this was useful to you, please hit the like button. It helps more people over 60 find this information when they need it. And subscribe for more honest, straightforward conversations about protecting your health. Take care of your heart. Take care of yourself. Your kitchen is one of the most powerful places in your life. Now you know exactly how to use it. Everything shared in this video is general health information only, not personal medical advice. Your situation is unique. Before making any changes to your diet or health routine, please speak with your own physician.